This is CJNU 93.7 FM. I'm Adam Glynn, and joining me in the virtual studio, I am thrilled to welcome Dr. Juliette Cooper and Dr. John Cooper. Thank you both for sparing a bit of time to chat with me.
I think it's lovely that you have us.
Now, before we do anything, Juliette does not go by Juliette. You go by Archie. And I have to ask you, why?
Well, before I was born, my parents had picked a name or names for the offspring. If it was a girl, it would be Janet Elizabeth. If it was a boy, it would be Archibald Roderick, in honor of my Scottish grandparents who had immigrated from Glasgow to Canada. Anyway, I'm clearly not a boy. And my father went to register the birth. And being my father, as he was doing that, he went, Janet. I don't like it. So I'm going to call her Juliette, Juliet, or TTE rather, which is the French version of my mother's name, Juliette. So he comes back and he tells my mother, and she's, confused. She said, well, that's going to create a problem because we'll have two Julies in the family. And my dad said, no, it won't be a problem at all. We'll just call her Archie. So, from day 2 of my life, I've been Archie. My grandparents were absolutely appalled. Cannot give this girl a man's name. But the bottom line was I had no idea until I was about 8 years old that it was, in fact, a man's name and not a woman's name. So
you were talking about your parents and where they came from originally. So where were you born and raised?
I was born in Chilliwack because my father was there. He was in training with the Canadian Army before he went overseas in World War II. So I didn't stay there very long. He got moved to Winnipeg to train at the Fort Osborne Barracks. And so at a very young age, I moved to Winnipeg. And then when he went overseas, my mother and I went to live with my grandparents, my Scottish grandparents, in Toronto. And so, you don't want to go from there because it'll take up too much time, but I have been around.
Well, I think it's fair to say then that you are a true Canadian because you've had an opportunity to see all that this wonderful place has to offer.
I am a passionate Canadian because I spent a great deal of my life, my young life, abroad. And I cannot begin to tell you how I value the fact that I'm a citizen of this country, even though this country's made some clanging mistakes. I'm still very proud to be a Canadian.
Now, John, how about yourself? Where are you originally from?
Born in Montreal, raised in Toronto and several small towns around there. Went to school, various schools, high schools, etc., in Toronto, and then went to the University of Toronto. I lived in a co-op and met my wife, my future wife. Finally decided to take the step. What was that, 1964? Oh, my. Some years ago. And then did a stint of 2 years in Kingston and 2 years in Hamilton, getting my PhD there, and then suddenly took off to Houston.
Texas.
Now, why Texas?
1-year scholarship. But it didn't work. It was 4 years. They wouldn't let me go.
I was going to say Texas.
No, we just got more money for you. You got to stay here. Archie, what are you going to do about this? She says, I'm going back to Canada with the kids. Are you coming? Of course, I said yes.
Good. But that must have been a change of pace. Texas is an interesting place, a very interesting place, and
absolutely.
When you think about the state capital being Austin, this interesting, quirky city, and the rest of the state being very different.
You're right. Yes, Austin is very much a college city. Used to be a college town. Now it's a college city. It's big. Houston has grown remarkably since we were there. And mind you, that was 40 years ago. So it's had time to have a few more million people at it.
Oh, I suppose.
I probably would not recognize it should I go back there.
Do you think you ever would?
No.
That's
not
fair.
to stay.
That's
Maybe
fair.
to visit, but not to stay.
So, John, what was your background? What did you choose to study and why?
Why is interesting. When I got out of high school, they put me into at University of Toronto in physics, and I just didn't like it. I wanted to do something biological, so I ended up in biology. And then I just kept on in biology in various ways throughout the whole of my life. The first 2 years in Kingston, I was under a professor who decided to go and move to Hamilton. He just said, "Are you coming?" And I think there were about 6 students with him. We all just said, "Yeah, sure." So
obviously a good professor then, because you wanted to follow.
Yep. We enjoyed talking with him. He challenged us, always challenged us mentally.
Now
that was perfect.
that's really important, I think, and a lot of people never really think about that. When you're going through education, it's not often the book learning that puts you in the direction that you're going to go for the rest of your life. It tends to be those provocative conversations with a human being.
Yes, that's exactly what happened with us, all of his students.
And Archie, how about yourself? What were your studies and sort of why did you fall into them?
Well, I guess I fell into them because my aunt was an occupational therapist. And so when I finished high school, the question was, well, what will Archie do? And so, I went to the University of Montreal just to check it out and realized that my French, although, reasonably adequate to order a meal in a restaurant, would not allow me to be a student in the occupational therapy program at that university. And I also checked out McGill, and I don't know, there was something about it that didn't quite resonate. Anyway, I went to the University of Toronto to follow in my aunt's footsteps because she had graduated from there in 1944, and was able to live with my grandparents for the 3 years that I was at U of T. And graduated as a person with a diploma in physical and occupational therapy, and then promptly went to work as an occupational therapist. And I've never practiced physiotherapy, but I have a great appreciation for my colleagues who are physiotherapists and what they do and what they know. I worked in mental health. I did some mental health consulting in Texas when I was there, came back to Manitoba, worked in mental health, and I got a call from the university one day. I was at Children's, and they said, or my boss actually said, the university's contacted me. Is there anyone here who would like to give them 6 lectures on pediatric psychiatry? Archie, what about you? And I went, that sounds like fun. I think I could do that. So I did that, and it was fun, and I think the students quite enjoyed it, because the next thing I knew, I was offered a position at the University of Manitoba. And it became very evident very quickly that if I liked academic life, which I really did, a diploma was not going to get me very far.
Right.
So I did 3 degrees in 11 years. And, the rest, as they say, is history.
That's pretty impressive.
Well, that's why I have white hair. You think I knew I'm not. It's because I did 3 degrees.
She earned every one of the degrees.
This being radio, what people don't realize is that Archie's actually 36.
Yes, absolutely. But, I absolutely adore academic life. I mean, it is the best, because I get to hang out in the library every day. I get to learn something new every day. And I'm pretty passionate about what I teach.
Now, that is critical, because, again, picking up on that thread we were talking about, a teacher who is not passionate about their subject is often the worst kind of teacher to have. They might be functionally very practical, but they're not going to inspire much in their students.
I think that's absolutely true. And when I think back on all of the people who have taught me over the years, I've been incredibly fortunate to have some very amazing teachers. And my PhD advisor, who was a person with an appointment in the Department of Human Anatomy and Cell Science, was just a wonderful, wonderful teacher. Very passionate about what she did, but she was always, very interested, very supportive of her students. So, I've been very fortunate.
I have to ask you both, because we've sort of darted around it a little bit. Obviously, you've been in a long and fruitful relationship with each other for quite some time, but how exactly did the two of you first meet?
I was living in the co-op then, and I was known as a person who would be glad to go on a blind date with anybody as long as I was fed. And that was my reputation, I guess, and that was my street rep. And that Archie invited me one night to a function. I don't even remember what the function was.
It was our university grad. And I had just come off a relationship, and I was initially not going to grad. And then a friend of mine said, well, I can fix you up with somebody. And
That
I
was
went,
Anita.
It was Anita.
Right.
And I went, well, okay, that's fine. And
Well, the rest is, as she said earlier, history.
Obviously, there was a connection. Do you think the fact that the two of you were interested in the biological side of the sciences maybe was a contributing factor? Or maybe that was just a nice, happy coincidence?
I think it was just a happy coincidence. It wasn't crucial.
So the two of you get together and you end up traveling down to Texas. And as you mentioned, Archie, you put your foot down and said, well, no, enough's enough. I'm heading home and I'm taking the kids. What are you up to, John? Come on. And so you have two kids, I understand.
Yes.
yes,
Tell me about them.
our older daughter, her name is Pilar. And she's very organized. Pilar should be running Canada. We'd be really in good shape if she was running Canada.
Excellent.
Anyway, she's an artistic, incredibly intelligent person, and I'm so proud of her. She's just an awesome person. So that's daughter number one. Daughter number two is Elizabeth. And Elizabeth was born in Texas, which makes her an American, which means that she votes in elections.
Is that something that you hold against her? I hope it isn't.
Well, it's interesting because we brought Liz to Canada when she was 3 years old. And so whenever she crosses the border into the States, because she has an American passport, she sometimes gets some aggravation. And apparently at one point, some person said to her, immigration person, well, why are you living in Canada? And was getting really quite annoyed about it because he figured that she was an American. She should be living in the United States. And so Liz, being Liz, said, my parents absconded with me when I was 3 years old, and they forcibly took me to Canada, and they've kept me there ever since. And I said to her, did he buy it? And she went, yeah, believe it or not, he bought it. Liz is, she's a very artistic person, and she's artistic in all different ways. She started off as being a dancer. She went through the School of Contemporary Dance, and now she is a circus arts instructor.
That's amazing.
She does the fabric, the Cirque du Soleil fabric.
40 feet off the ground, hanging from a curtain.
Wow.
She does that, but she instructs in circus arts. She's very, very talented, very accomplished person, incredibly bright. Both our kids are really smart. I have no idea where they get that from. Really, they're way smarter than we are.
Now, hold on a minute. Don't sell yourselves short. That's not fair.
Anyway, we are blessed in the fact that Liz and her husband Gary live here in Winnipeg, and so we get to see them quite a bit. Pilar lives in Ottawa, and so we don't get to see her as much, but certainly we're in contact daily through Facebook and all that other social media stuff.
If you don't mind my asking, Pilar is a Spanish name.
Yes.
Why?
Well, because I spent 10 years of my formative life, my early life, in South America. And I really like the name Pilar. I think it's just lovely. And, when it came time to choose a name for this offspring, it was Pilar Maria. And we said at the time, well, we'll call her Maria because everybody knows what that means. Anyway, we get her home from the hospital. We look at her, and John says, she's a
Pilar.
She looks like a Pilar, not a Maria. And sure enough, at age 3, when people would say to her, your name is Pillar, she would go, no, it's not. My name is Pilar. That
Get
says
it right.
all. Yeah, get it right. That says it all.
That's fantastic. What is it they say, from the mouths of babes? But kids have got their heads screwed on right. They know a lot of things, and maybe we should pay a little bit more attention. Clearly, since retirement, the two of you have thrown yourselves into a variety of different things, and I'm gonna go into that in a little bit more detail. But the first thing I want to ask John is, why was it that you made the decision to be a stay-at-home dad? Because a lot of people in your position would not have come to the same conclusion that you did.
Well, it's very simple, actually. I was a medical and research scholar, which means I got your money, Canada's money, all the savings, et cetera, went into the Fed government. They paid me to teach and to do research at U of M. After 4 years, that's the extent of it, then suddenly I became unemployed. My fellow mentor decided to change the direction of the department to applied science instead of pure science. And I tried several times, went to the States 3 times, went to Montreal, Vancouver, I can't remember, looking for jobs, et cetera. But every time I was there, I was the only guy, just me. I was against somebody else who had a raft of 5 or 6 technicians and students, 5 or 6 students, to bring with them to the position.
Wow.
I just brought my brain, nothing else. And I was always second. And I finally got tired of it and said, what the heck? Archie, you've got a good job. You've got a good career going. You make money. Why don't I just stay home and look after the kids? Then we don't have any problems. And that's how it happened, simply. To be Spockian, it was very logical.
Yeah, it was logical. Yeah, I don't know that we ended up discussing it a tremendous amount. I think we just, we did it.
I just came up with the decision to say, I'm going to stay home and look after the kids. And Archie said, yeah, okay.
Archie, you worked hard, played hard, had a lot of fun in your career by the sounds of it. But I understand that when the big R, retirement, came around, you found yourself kind of twiddling your thumbs and going, well, now what?
That's really true. I thought I knew exactly what I wanted to do, stay at home and do my crochet and, the garden and all that stuff. And after 3 weeks, I went, oh my goodness, this is not going to work out too well. I think I'll call my former department head and see if she's got a little bit of teaching that I could do. Mm-hmm. She basically said, yes, we would be delighted if you came back and helped out. And so that's what I did. And
that coming back and helping out meant full time.
Well, I made it full time. I mean, the university has been incredibly kind to me. They made me professor emerita. And when you become emerita, it really means that, you're there for life. And I said to the president of the day, Dr. Seth Mary, I said, well, now you can never get rid of me. Anyway, I mean, the university's been generous. They've given me an office. They continue to ask me to come back to teach. And so, why would I leave? I love doing what I do.
When something is a job or a career or a passion, it can be something that you enjoy. But when it's a vocation, literally, it's a calling. It feels like something that you were always meant to do. And when you're doing it, you're at your most happy. So you are very lucky in that you not only found what that thing was, but you've been able to do it and enjoy every moment of it.
Well, I can't say enough about the University of Manitoba. I mean, it has supported me every step of the way. And I've been privileged to be, part of the governance of the university, the teaching part of the university, the research part of the university. I mean, it really is truly my home, and I feel at home and very supported by it.
The Department of Music. Why did you get invited to join the department? Are you a passionate person about music? I assume you enjoy listening to music.
Oh, it's a long and sordid story. Anyway, I had been retired maybe 3 months, I guess. And I got a phone call. And it was the secretary of the vice president, academic and provost. And she said, could Dr. Kerr phone you at home tonight? And I went, yeah, what's this about? And she said, well, I really can't tell you what it's about. So I came home and I said to John, maybe they're going to take away my emeritus title. I mean, I don't know what this is all about. Anyway, sure enough, Dr. Kerr phoned me at 7 o'clock and said, you know that the dean of the Faculty of Music has resigned. I said, yes, I know that. He said, well, we would like you to be the interim dean. And I went, Robert, that's the craziest thing I have ever heard. Why me? And he said, well, they need an administrator. They need somebody who has experience being an academic administrator, within the university and with HR, with all the rest of it. That's why and we know that you're retired, so you're available. I said, well, I have to think about it. So I went downstairs, I told John, and he literally rolled off the couch laughing. He thought that was hilarious. He said, what do you know about music? You play the accordion, maybe, sort of.
Not even well.
Not even well.
You know nothing about music. You don't like jazz, which of course I liked at the time. I still do. And she just said, but I can play one thing. The spreadsheet. I can
play the spreadsheet.
Now that's a talented thing right there. Not everybody has the dexterity, mental or physical, to play the spreadsheets.
So I went in for an interview with Dr. Kerr, and I went and met with the faculty and all the faculty in music. And I said to them, if you are willing to accept somebody who is not a musician, I said, I love classical music, but I am not a musician. I will try my best, but, until you find a permanent dean. Anyway, they were very gracious. One person stood up and said, we'd be delighted if you came. So 1st of December, I arrived and, it was a very different environment from what I was used to. And at the Bannatyne campus, a completely different culture. But it was an amazing experience. The people in music were lovely. They were very gracious. They're incredibly talented people. I've never seen faculty members work as hard as they do. The students were terrific, and the support staff was terrific. I mean, it was an entirely excellent experience. And certainly the administration supported whatever I tried to do to make the faculty work as well as it possibly could, given the fact that I was an interim dean. And it was great. I was there for 18 months and it was just lovely.
Now, do you find yourself picking up the accordion more now, or
no.
Any other instrument?
No.
It's an interesting thing.
Wants to play the spreadsheet.
Oh,
I have great admiration for people who can do what those folks can do. I ended up actually putting on a course in anatomy for musicians, because so much of what they do requires their bodies to do almost impossible things. So they don't have a really clear understanding of what's underneath the skin and why does it hurt.
I think most musicians don't necessarily think about how they are holding themselves as they play their instrument. And for brass and woodwind, obviously, it's using an awful lot of the core and the diaphragm and everything else. And, when you think about people trying to play the clarinet and having to get the embouchure or whatever it might be. But even those playing instruments like guitar or bass guitar, how you hold, if you hold yourself in the wrong position, you might play the instrument well, but by the time you retire, you might have, crippling neck and back pain.
Definitely.
That's amazing.
In the correct position, you'd play the instrument better.
Absolutely. Now, John, do you play an instrument?
No, I attempted the guitar badly, and I gave up. I love music, but I can't play it myself. I don't have the right mental attitude or how to read notes and things like that. I just can't do it. Yeah. My father played the piano by sound, by touch, by ear. That's the word, by ear. Couldn't read a note, but he was wonderful. I said, if he can do it, I could do it. No. I didn't get those genes from him.
I also can't read music to save my life, other than I can look at a piece of sheet music and I'll go, that's a D. That's a B. That one's a sharp. And that one's supposed to be shorter than the one before it. But I can't play it. But I do play by ear, and it's just for the sake of trying something, and I like having a go. So it's not too late for either of you. Just pick something up and have a go and have fun. The most important thing.
I can play something very well.
Oh, yes.
The player piano.
Oh, the player piano, yeah.
Now, that is an interesting...
I can do that one very well.
That is an interesting instrument. And,
yes.
You know, funnily, that actually takes me on to something that I was going to ask you next, John, which is you found a second career in the wonderful world of objects and antiques and collectibles. And
yes.
I'm going to ask you how you fell into this, but before I even get there, I'm going to say, how many player pianos have you seen in your time?
Oh, seen? Probably about 50 altogether. Mostly from one person. He had 6 at any one time.
Oh, wow.
In various stages of repair here in town, here in Winnipeg. He's the one from whom I bought mine. He was offering 1 rebuilt totally ready, and 3 that he was going to do. And I just listened to him. I'd been to see all of them at his home. I just said, I want the Heinzman. And there's this long silence. I said, Terry, are you still there? He said, I didn't expect that.
Oh,
that was the most expensive one, which is why I didn't want to sell it. That's why I told you what it costs. And I said, I know, but I heard it. I want it. He delivered it.
A lot of people who buy and sell antiquities and trade in these kind of things, sometimes there are certain items that they really don't want to sell. But I guess if the price is right.
Well, he made the mistake of actually saying a price. And I said,
Indeed.
Okay, I said, okay, I'm going to pay that. I want it.
It's the strange situation where they say a price that they think everyone will balk at, and you put your hand out and say, deal. And then they're going, what on earth is this hand doing here? No, that's fabulous. How many piano rolls do you have out of interest?
Probably about 150.
That's fantastic. Any ragtime in there?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Good stuff. I've always been a fan of ragtime. I think one of the first pieces I tried to learn to play was The Entertainer, so I like Scott Joplin.
Yes.
That's one of the ones we have.
Very nice. Just don't ask me to play it because it won't sound anywhere near as good. John, you found yourself in this interesting second career. Were you always interested in antiques and interesting objects?
Not really. The problem is, you see, during university when I was in Toronto, I took a job as an au pair because my family lived in Don Mills, which was far too far to travel all the time, every day, back and forth to university. And I got into a house looking after 3 children. My job was just to clean up the dishes, do the vacuuming, keep them in order a little bit, et cetera, and then go off and bugger off and do my university stuff and come back in the evening and do the same thing. The problem is it was the home of an antiques dealer.
Ah.
And I found myself surrounded by wonderful things, and my mind started saying, why is this so good? Why do I like it so well? What about that one? Oh, I don't like that one. So on. Why not? So I started asking questions. Of course, that's the job of anybody. Ask questions and get answers. And the first thing I know, I get married. No, not the first thing, but sometime later I get married, and we move to Kingston, and I started wanting to learn more and buy some antiques. So we settled on little medicine bottles, which were 50 cents or $1 at the time, which was a large amount of money for an impecunious student, but it was reasonable. We could do it. And from there, it just exploded, this balloon. It just, gracious, now look where we are.
I don't think you need to apologise for that, because clearly, much like Archie with her vocation and passion for teaching and working in that university environment, you found a vocation, you found a passion. And
beyond that, and the thing is that one uses one's brain in order to collect antiques properly. You have to study them. You have to learn about them. You have to learn their history. You have to figure out, why was this made? What pressures, social pressures and design pressures and industrial pressures made it look like it does now? Why does it look like it does now instead of an object 100 years before that. Why? That's what I look at every time I pick up an antique. I say, okay, I figured this one out very quickly. In fact, I took a course in glass making, hot glass blowing at Red Deer College for 3 years, 1 week each year. So it's not totally 3 years, just 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
But I wanted to learn how these objects were made. Now I can look at a piece of glass and really truly appreciate it because I know the techniques involved and how difficult they are. I can only make nasty little globs. The things I get are beautiful. They're well technically and artistically arranged superbly. And that's what I enjoy.
Just make sure you keep the nasty little blobs, put a high price tag on them, and call them paperweights.
I've got a few of them.
Good.
I did keep some. I just said, oh, I made that. I signed it. I made it. Little J-E-Z script on the bottom. That's mine.
And one should always take pride in those kind of things. You might look at it in 35 years and say, oh God, that's awful. But I made it.
It's still awful, but that's okay. I still like them because they're mine. I did them.
No, that's superb. That context, I think, is what some people lack when they're looking at antiques and objects, whether it's going to a thrift store or going to an antiques mall or an antiques dealer. We're quite lucky in Winnipeg that we're rich in places where people can find antiquities and interesting objects, but not everyone is thinking about that context, and it makes it less of maybe it's less of a chore. It's not just buying and selling things, it's learning about the anthropology of mankind as it evolved and industry and how things changed. And this passion that you fell into through being an au pair and finding yourself surrounded by things in the house of an antiques dealer led in later life to you running your own antiques store.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about it.
Oh, gracious. Well, started off as we collected things for ourselves because we liked them. I still use 150-year-old bowls for cooking with, in the oven, in the microwave, etc. They're useful, of course, and that's the whole point. Utility is part of an object's enamoring features. I started collecting a bunch of little things here and there, and then I found a friend also who would do the same thing. Did a couple of flea markets, shall we call them, or antiques shows in malls here in town, then suddenly discovered one at Polo Park where it was put on from someone from Toronto, who was then about to go off and do a round of malls in the next few weeks. Let me see now. There was Calgary, Edmonton, and Saskatoon. So I called my friend Dick and said, why don't we just fill a car, and our cars, we each had small cars, and just go and do these, because they provide the tables. All we're going to do is set our stuff up there and sell.
Nice.
We worth in each mall, have to put up with a motel, but we can share it, so that's okay. Did that, came back, and discovered that I enjoyed it. It was fun. Of course, during that time, one would look around at the other vendors' wares and try to find something that you perhaps suspected that they didn't quite know enough about, or that there was some hidden quality there that needed further investigation, further study to discover why it was better than other people thought. And I just enjoyed doing that too. A friend and I started our own little tiny antique store in about a 300 square foot room, one big room in a house on Sherbrooke Street. After 2.5 years, someone set fire to the house and everything burned down except our store. Sacrosanct? Maybe. That would be terrible of me to say that.
That's
However,
amazing, but also think what it would have been like trying to make the insurance claim.
We didn't have insurance.
Well, of course you didn't. Of course you didn't. Because why would you?
Anyway, the fact is that after that, the owner of the building did not repair it. So people were breaking in through the burnt out walls to get into our place.
Oh, blimey.
Got robbed, I think, 3 times until finally I said, okay, this is enough. I made an anonymous phone call to the city and said, this is an unsecure situation. I don't think this business should be open. And I'll be darned, next week, we suddenly had a vacate notice on the door. So our lease was broken. Therefore, we didn't have to pay any further rent. So then I went into associateship, not a partner, associateship with another store that was already established on Corridon Avenue. Lasted 3 years there until I realized the owner of the place was an absolute control freak.
Ah,
And I said, that's it, I'm out of here. How am I going to do this? Well, he came by next week and said, the lease is up in 2 weeks. I'm not going to renew it. You can renew it if you want to take it over. I said, thanks, Jim. I went away. I found a place. Within 1 week after that, I had moved everything in there, my new place that I was just renting, and had an opening party within 1 week.
wow.
To which
Wow.
he was not invited.
And you've been there ever since.
And that was, yeah, I've been there ever since. 3 years later, I bought the building. There we are.
And for those who maybe think they know where this is, but not quite sure.
Oh, it's another little building, but this time it's quite safe.
Good.
It's the 1912 house at 914 Corridon. It's got 5 stairs up to the first floor.
Fair
And
enough.
when you're inside, you have 24 to 30 inches to move around in all directions. It's got aisles. So it's 598 and a half square feet. I
And
measured precisely.
and you avail of every 16th of an
Every
inch.
cubic inch.
No, it's so this is a wonderful place, and Abbey Antiques is one of the first places I visited in Winnipeg before I moved here. I have been in the past. This would have been 9 or 10 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
I have been in since, but 9 or 10 years ago, when I was still courting my wife, and it was my first trip to Winnipeg, and she said, "You got to check this place out. It's amazing." And I loved it. And I don't know, maybe it was something. My mum always enjoyed antiquing and going to charity stores and thrift stores and that kind of thing. So I spent my childhood looking at interesting little things. And yeah, my wife probably regrets bringing me to these kind of places now because, for instance, I am fortunate enough to work in radio, and at CJNU as a not-for-profit radio station, I get to do my vocation, which is work in the non-profit industry and also work in radio. It's my two favourite things in life, and I get real joy in supporting the community. But specifically when it comes to antiquing, I now collect radios, and
I wonder why.
every room in our house has at least one. Some rooms have several, and sometimes my wife gives me a look as if to say, "Oh God, not another one." But here's the thing: much like yourself, John, there was a book that was published a few years ago by a Japanese author looking at the art of tidying up, and
Yes.
one of the things in this
Yes.
book was talking about whether an item brings you joy. And I will only keep something if it brings me joy. And if after a long period of time it no longer gives me joy, then it's wonderful. I've enjoyed having it. It's time for someone else to enjoy it now.
Yes.
And so
Look
I
around,
try
find
not
some
to.
other home for it.
Exactly. And I try not to let things go too crazy. But, certainly every radio I own works, and they all serve a specific purpose, at least in my mind. So this is something that I've always been interested in, and I just think it's brilliant that you almost fell into this as your second career, but clearly you have derived great enjoyment from it, John.
It's challenging, mentally challenging, because I have to try to learn something new every day. A few months ago, I think last year actually, I bought a collection of what was described to me as Chinese spectacles, eyeglasses. Turns out they were, but I had to find out, how do we know how old they are? I started studying them. I found a wonderful outlet in the UK, called them, emailed them, etc. Got photographs of one that I sent. I don't understand this pair of spectacles. And they wrote me back saying, "Oh, it's very simple. These are Chinese. They're developed for the Chinese forehead. Slightly different than Western European foreheads. And that's why they look like they do." So I just did a quick, no, not a quick study, an exhaustive study on their website, reading all the information they had. And I developed a schematic where I could tell how old something is. And I just wrote it down in short form to keep with the glasses. So when I offer glasses, see that one? It has to date after 1790 because that feature wasn't developed until 1790. Therefore, it can't date earlier. This one probably doesn't date after such date because they fell out of favor at that time. So again, you have to just put a sort of a scientific bent on things and categorize things with reasons. They must be reasons.
It's like
and that works.
It's like
so I taught myself something I had no knowledge about whatsoever. In about 1 week of intensive study, now I know Chinese eyeglasses, spectacles.
It's like an amazing combination of being a research student and a private investigator. You know, you're going deep dives on all of these things and finding things in unexpected places, and over time you're just building a bigger and bigger picture. No, it's absolutely amazing, and I just think it's so cool that you found this, and it's so cool that you derive so much passion and pleasure and knowledge from this pursuit.
You have to learn something every day, otherwise you're not really living.
Now that is true. That is very true. If anyone has just tuned in, welcome. You're listening to CJNU. I'm Adam Glynn, and this is the Bannatyne Legacy Circle celebration for 2021. Joining me in the virtual studio right now, we have Doctors John and Archie Cooper. The reason I've had the opportunity to chat with you both today is because of the amazing work of the Health Sciences Centre Foundation. And both of you have connections with HSC in various ways. John, I'll turn to you first. How did you first get connected with HSC?
Because I was, in my previous career as a scientist at the U of M, I was an associated with the Department of Medicine. And they had a connection with HSC, of course. And afterwards, when I declined to continue my academic career, put it that way, I had a couple of incidents where I needed care, and HSC did a wonderful job. They treated me like any other person, not because I was, quote, a doctor or anything like that. I was just a patient who needed looking after, and they did it absolutely wonderfully. So Archie and I had a discussion a couple of months ago about what are we doing in future with the assets that we have. We said, okay, we have various options. Archie said, HSC. I said, sure, why not? They looked after me. They deserve to continue the good work they're doing. They deserve support for that.
No, it really is amazing that you took that decision, and rightly so. Like you say, an organisation like the Health Sciences Centre Foundation does so much to support our community and, you know, fill in the gaps where government funding will never be able to fill them. You know, there's only so many dollars that can be generated from tax revenue in any given year, and there's always more that needs to be done. Archie, obviously, while you were based at the U of M, you spent most of your career at the Bannatyne campus, so you were in close proximity to the Health Sciences Centre.
Yes, and many years ago, I can't tell you how many, but a long time ago, I was contacted, and I can't remember all the circumstances, but anyway, I was asked to join a committee that would do peer review for research that was targeted to the allied health professions. So occupational therapy, physiotherapy, pharmacy, radiology, you know, a whole bunch of different professions that were neither medicine nor nursing. And I was quite intrigued because the dollars for that kind of research were very few and far between. And it seemed to me that that was a very far-seeing, really a bold leap for the HSC Foundation to do that, to commit to funding allied health. And so I served on the peer review committee a couple of years anyway, and then was asked to chair it. And I felt very privileged to do that because I think that my role not only is to do the peer review and to work with people to do the peer review, but also to educate folks as to, you know, what is expected and why should the Health Sciences Centre Foundation part with its hard-earned dollars to fund your research. And so I've been chairing that peer review committee now for, as I say, a very long period of time. And I've admired the fact that the foundation continues to support that particular research sort of area. because it has made a huge difference. It really has. I've seen tremendous growth in the quality of the research that has come to the foundation in that regard. And it's, to me, it's visionary to do that. And so I support the foundation 100%. Plus the fact that the folks who work at the foundation, wow, are they ever fun people? I like hanging out with them.
Well, that's awesome to hear. And, visionary is an interesting word, and it's really fascinating that the two of you came to the same conclusion that, the HSC Foundation is a cause that is worth supporting as you think about what you're going to do in the next stage of life as you figure out what happens with money, assets, etc. It's a difficult conversation sometimes for people to have, and it can be a difficult conversation for couples and families to have. But you say, Archie, that what they are doing is visionary, and that is fascinating because you are seeing that longer term research side of things, and in a very hands-on way because you've been involved in peer reviewing. And you, John, have seen both the behind the scenes kind of thing while you were there in your first career, but also just as a patient, seeing what it's like receiving care on the front line. So together, you've both touched on two of the biggest aspects of what the HSC Foundation is there for. It's there to try and support the importance of crucial and high-quality day-to-day care and improving the experience that somebody has in hospital. But also they're there to fund research and look ahead and try and figure out what's coming next and make sure that the Health Sciences Centre is ready to respond to whatever those things might be. Before I let you both go, one very important question that I want to ask. For anybody who's out there thinking about, what causes should I be supporting? Should I be thinking about legacy giving? Again, some people find it an awkward conversation. We're hoping to try and get rid of that stigma a little bit through the conversations that we have here as part of the Bannatyne Legacy Circle celebration. But for anybody who's thinking about long-term planning and giving, why is it a good idea, first and foremost, to do this kind of planning? And secondly, why is it so important to support an organisation like the HSC Foundation? Archie, I guess I'll start with you.
Well, I think that you can't take it with you.
I was just going to say that.
So you really do need to start thinking about, well, what do you do with it? And, we've been very blessed throughout our lives and our careers that we do have assets to leave to posterity. So, we could just blow it all. I'm not sure how you do that with the pandemic, but I think you need to think well ahead of time about the causes that are dear to your heart and what your assets could do for those particular causes. So it's not ever been a very difficult conversation for John and me. I mean, I think that because he deals with antiques and he's always dealing with people who are trying to figure out what to do with their stuff afterwards, we've always been able to have that conversation. So, you cannot take it with you. So think about what good you can do.
You can't just leave it behind, hoping that someone else will figure out.
So
that's a huge job.
So then, what causes, what are things that are important to you? So for me anyway, research is important, health is important, and health care is important. And I think some of that comes from those 4 years in Texas.
Yes.
Where we were part of the American so-called healthcare system. There is no system, trust me, none. And we were always terrified of a medical emergency because we could end up with no money at all, no assets in that situation. So Canada's healthcare system, imperfect though it is a wonderful asset to our country. And so we do recognize that research is really important to the continuance of that excellence. And when you see excellence embodied through patient care, that should be supported. So, if you've had an experience that was really good, you have the opportunity, you have the responsibility, I think,
Yes.
to promote that and to provide the wherewithal to the best of your ability to ensure that that kind of excellence continues.
And John, for yourself?
What she said.
You are a wise and intelligent man. Now, last but by no means least, we spoke a little bit about music earlier, and everyone who has participated in our program gets the opportunity to pick a piece of music that means something to them, and that'll be what we use to play you out here on the program today. So between the two of you, is there a single piece of music that you particularly enjoy?
I've got one right off the top.
And what is that?
The Lark Ascending by Ralph Vaughan
Yes.
Williams.
Okay, I agree with that.
Now, why that in particular?
It's so evocative. I hear that music and I see the bird. And I see, I've never been to that part of England, but I can appreciate the Norfolk, the fens, and I see the lark ascending, and it's transcendent.
I think of it more as just listen to it and you have hope for mankind.
Yeah, truly.
Well, on that incredibly optimistic note, I cannot thank you both enough for your time, your wit and your wisdom, and for your generosity and support of our community, and specifically the Health Sciences Centre Foundation. Dr. Archie Cooper and Dr. John Cooper, thank you both so much.
Thank you very much for letting us speak with you.
Thanks, Adam. That was fun.